In the late 80s, marijuana took a back seat as the demand for designer drugs such as ecstasy and cocaine took over. The Mafia muscled in, making hundreds of millions of dollars. Police were desperate to stop the influx of drugs onto the streets, so they started recruiting undercover officers to infiltrate the Mafia and get convictable evidence. One of those chosen was young Melbourne cop Damien Marrett.
I joined the police force in the start of '87. In all, I spent 16 years in the police force. So 6 of those years, or just over 6 of those years, was undercover. It's harder than what it sounds. You know, a lot of people would say, oh, you know, I'd like to go out and pretend I'm somebody else and chat. But it's when you've got to remember all the lies that you've been speaking over the last 6 months and sustain that life, where it just becomes exhausting.
Exhausting and addictive.
When you do your first job and you get it to the point where some good crooks are busted, you're basically on a high, and you end up trying to chase that high throughout the rest of your undercover, career.
Like all undercover cops, Damien always had to think on his feet, even under the most bizarre circumstances.
One drug deal that I had organised down in Victoria for a large amount of LSD and ecstasy, I was going to travel to Sydney, meet this crook's connections, pay 230 grand and receive all the drugs.
Being undercover sometimes meant wearing a recording device strapped to his body. And knowing discovery meant certain death, bulky equipment just compounded the risks.
There was a little bit of rivalry between Sydney police and Victorian police, and the devices that they made me wear were larger than ours and obviously old stock. And so I was covered in wires and devices. I knock on the door and there's 4 crooks inside. When I got in there, everyone was naked.
Damien, my friend, come on in.
And I basically got a bit of a shock.
Good.
Hello. They tell me to take my clothes off, and obviously I can't with the devices.
Mate, it's a hot day. Take your clothes off. Feel free. Why? All right, boys? Well, comfortable? Or you puss or something? No, mate. Have you got something to hide? No, mate. What's going on?
And I'm trying to grip onto anything to get out of this, and calling them faggots, and we do things different. I was actually from Perth, my cover story. Perth boys don't take their clothes off for you Sydney gays.
What have you got under there? What are you hiding?
I've got nothing under there, mate. What are you hiding? All of the water, mate. I come here to a fucking drug deal, you moron.
Take your clothes off and show us.
No, put your clothes back on, mate. I'm not a fucking fool.
Take your fucking clothes off.
It got angrier and angrier, and I knew it was on the verge of fisticuffs and pulling out weapons. I don't know where they were going to pull their weapons out from.
Take your fucking clothes off.
No, mate, I'll fucking talk to you. This is fucking shit.
I got down to the bottom. I ripped off the devices and gave them a call and said, listen, the reason why I didn't want to get undressed, we all said no guns. I had a gun. I'm willing to come back up and get naked.
But the crooks didn't go for it. This was one of the many lucky escapes for Damien. While Damien continued his path to infiltrate the Mafia, around the country police were finding huge dope crops among the grapes of Griffith, out the back of Burke and up near Townsville. This was a problem that had to be fought on a national level. So the government formed a National Crime Authority known as the NCA.
In the 90s, of course, the NCA was primarily focused on 2 or 3 organised crime groups, one of which was the Calabrians. And it was a national investigation in Adelaide, together with the South Australian Police, that they were targeting individuals who they thought were participating in criminal activity.
One senior Mafia investigator working for the NCA at the time was Detective Jeffrey Bowen. He was about to be the key witness for the prosecution in an upcoming trial. The day before the trial, the Mafia sent a clear message. On the 2nd of March 1994, Detective Bowen received a parcel. It was marked as sent from IBM. Security checked the scanner was working, then proceeded to scan the unexpected parcel. It came up clear.
It wasn't a terribly sophisticated bomb. Charges were placed inside a parcel with the triggering mechanism focused on the lid.
As Jeffrey Bowen went back to his office to open the parcel, he ironically joked that it might be a bomb.
Might be a bomb. Yeah, nah, why?
Once the lid was open on the parcel, triggered the explosion.
The blast tore apart the NCA office on the top floor of a city building. The street below was showered with glass as windows blew out. Amazingly, no injuries to pedestrians.
There's a huge shower of glass and then all paper was falling down and smoke billowing out and then some vertical blinds were falling down and it was just a mess everywhere.
Police say a parcel bomb delivered to the office exploded near two men. One was killed, the second was seriously injured. The dead man was Detective Sergeant Jeffrey Bowen, a 36-year-old Western Australian detective on secondment to the NCA. He leaves behind a wife and two young children.
This letter bomb was a targeted assassination on a police officer whose upcoming testimony threatened senior mafia figures.
It shows the mentality of the Italian group that they put themselves on such a pedestal that nobody's allowed to touch them. And, you know, sorry, but that's not how it works. So, you know, it's sad. Jeffrey Bowen was a great detective and beautiful family and lost his life just simply because he was trying to uphold the law.
Adelaide Court this morning.
Bowen's assassination had an immediate impact on the trial.
This court case was adjourned. Federal prosecutors told the court the trial couldn't go ahead because of Detective Jeff Bowen's death.
Oh, shut up, you
Although the police don't doubt the Calabrian Mafia was responsible for the bombing, no one has ever been convicted of Jeffrey Bowen's murder. But it galvanised law enforcement around the country.
Traditionally in Australia, the criminal networks have primarily used corruption as the tool to influence law enforcement. But to be actually attacked in that way was something totally unexpected, but it also energised the various organised crime investigation groups around the country.
Next, Damien Marrett wins the trust of the Mafia's inner circle and the incredible secret footage of a huge drug operation in flight. And for Damien, partying with the big boys was a do-or-die performance.